Welcome friends to another r/EntitledParents video. Today we've got a crazy story about a father trying to take away an entire car. But first, a story from bootysnacks.com. My black father called me, a mixed-raced woman, a bedw for having a white boyfriend and threatened to kill him multiple times. This happened a long while ago. I found my biological father whilst I was in foster care. He's from the Caribbean. I grew up in Hawaii. My mom's American, she's a whole other can of beans. I would talk to him over WhatsApp and he'd talk to me. He didn't raise me, so this is like an issue of entitlement over my dating habits. He also expressed other things about how I should live my life, like eating pork is evil, and disliked the fact that I'm surrounded by evil Asians and whites all the time. You know, normal dad things. That's like being an American GI and finding your long-lost baby in the Philippines and discovering that, oh my god, they don't worship George Washington, and they eat dinuguan and being mad about it. I was 17 when he found me, and he expected me to be completely in line with his culture and expectations. At the time, he'd send me money, which I appreciated because my foster parents would take all of the money they received from the government and only treated the Filipino foster children with any sense of care or love. If it's not obvious, foster parents were Filipino. Me and the other non-Filipino foster children were left to fend for ourselves. We had a roof over our heads and some food, but that was the extent of them caring for us. We would have to buy our supplies for school, pay for laundry, find a way to get clothes, toiletries, etc. They were also openly racist. Foster parents eventually lost their license. Anyhow, while talking to my father, it was revealed that he was a raging narcissist, just like my mother. He would tell grandiose tales about himself, how everyone loves him, and how I need to go back to the Caribbean ASAP to go back to my culture, and say how I was a black Caribbean girl. He would go on and on about culture, how I need to go back to my culture, how I'm a pure black woman and I need to go back to my culture. Whenever I said I was mixed, he said it was American cultural confusion. He was pretty racist against practically everyone who wasn't specifically exactly like him. Meanwhile, he wants to choose my husband, who of course has to be pure black, dark-skinned with dreadlocks like him. The audacity to think that he has the right to select a husband for his estranged daughter who grew up in the comparatively socially progressive Hawaii. At the time, I started dating this white guy who I thought was cute, and we hit it off. Turns out we share a lot in common. Fast forward, my father kind of finds out because I casually mentioned my friend. I feel like I'm lying by withholding information, so I come clean. My father threatened to fly to Hawaii and kill my boyfriend and called me a nasty, Americanized bedw, a sellout, that no one trusts black children with white fathers, that race mixing is American degeneracy, along with feminism and homosexuality. He disowned me and stopped talking to me. Not without a bunch of threats, calling me a dumb white girl, an American with no culture and a sellout. My dad is great, yes, I'm just so dumbfounded by this man. He has me with a white American woman and gets mad that when I'm raised by her, I don't share his cultural ideals and I see myself as mixed? What? Do you guys agree with me that this father disowning and cutting off OP is honestly probably for the best? Was there really any salvaging this relationship to be had? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Our next story is from Mama Squirrel, abrasive mother-in-law taking bedroom from grandson for herself. So this has been on my chest for a while and I don't know where else to vent besides my husband. I also don't know where my place is as far as saying something. The situation is concerning my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law and her kids, my 3 nephews. Quick backstory, she was physically abusive to both my husband and sister-in-law and has some kind of undiagnosed personality disorder? I'm not sure, just she was real messed up to her kids. She became better behaved with time and medication, but still had angry outbursts, spending sprees, spreading rumors here and there. When I met my husband 14 years ago in 2008, he was 21 and I was 18. We all just kind of tolerated it as it wasn't too often and not physical. Fast forward, we ceased all contact with her around 2015, 7 years, because of an argument between us and her/her husband's stepfather. My husband couldn't take the way they handled the situation and treated me. He also decided that he was sick of her denying the past child abuse. He just wanted to cut all the toxicity off. Now it's been 7 years since we've talked, except for like 5 unavoidable times at sister-in-law's, where there were only greetings given. In this time, we've heard stories of her drama from our sister-in-law. She falsely accused her own daughter, sister-in-law, of child abuse in front of a bunch of other relatives. Tried to find a way to take custody of brother-in-law's kids because his mother wanted to move to her home country with him. Wilder spending now on designer BS purses, maxing credit cards. The spending's built up over the past year and a half or so, to the point where my husband's stepfather has threatened divorce multiple times. It finally happened like 2 months ago. They sold their house, divided stuff up, etc. She was never self-sufficient during any of this. She's working at a gas station for crap money last I heard, and has no sense of budgeting. My sister-in-law decided to help her mom out and has now moved her in with her family. She's married with a 10-year-old, 7-year-old, and 4-year-old. They live in a trailer. It's actually nice in a nice neighborhood and they own it. They don't have a lot of money and they've worked very hard to be homeowners and do the best they can. And I'm proud of them, and I think they're great parents. It's a 3-bedroom. The youngest 2 boys, 7 and 4, share a room. The oldest, 11, as appropriate, has his own. When I heard mother-in-law was going to move in, I figured it was temp. Like a month or 2 on the couch till she figured her stuff out. No, she took the oldest one's room, and now the 3 boys are sharing a tiny room. My husband hates the situation too. He went over there 2 days ago and told me how our oldest nephew showed him the cot him and his dad made for him to sleep on. They built it together and made it so it rolls under the bunk beds because there's no room for another bed. My nephew was proud of it because he thought it was cool because he made it with his dad. But it broke me and my husband's hearts. We both grew up poor with not enough room for everybody to have a bed. So the fact that there is enough room for all the kids, but it was taken away, irritates the crap out of me. The worst part is they're planning on keeping this arrangement up until they can collectively, with mother-in-law, buy a house. Same situation, just a bigger house. My nephew's going to be 12 soon and things are going to start changing, and it's just not appropriate to me when there's room available. I really hope at some point the brother-in-law puts their foot down and stops allowing for the sister-in-law to let the mom walk all over them and their family. I think it's pretty obvious the manipulation and the string pulling that's going on here for mother-in-law. And for the brother-in-law and sister-in-law, it's kind of surprising how far they've let it go so far. You just hope they put an end to it eventually. By the way, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below so you never miss any of my daily videos. Every single video has awesome stories, like our next story from the True Soma. My father's trying to take away a car that he gave me for Christmas. When I was 18, my father gave me a car for Christmas in the hopes that it helps me while I was in college. He considered it a late graduation present along with my Christmas present. He told me I could do with it the heck I want to, said I could trade it in or sell it, whatever I wanted. Now, about 2 years later, we're going through a falling out in a sense. He's a divorced man. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that he found happiness with his fiancée, but he would in a sense place her kids above me. He would buy them expensive gifts and get them whatever they wanted with no questions asked, while with me it's the 3rd degree or the cheapest thing he could find. I don't really complain about it because normally I pay for the things I want or need, but I mentioned to my father because I told him I didn't necessarily feel welcome there because his whole house is covered with photos and achievements of her kids. There's even a room dedicated to them. His response was that I was blaming her for that and how the photos he had of me weren't that good to be displayed. A longer story short, he came to the conclusion that I didn't want to be a part of his new family and that I was being disrespectful and ungrateful. This argument lasted for a week, with us always fighting at night, until he told me to get out of his house, called me a witch, and that it was never my home, and my room will now be considered the guest bedroom, and I will not have a place to stay. There was a lot more stuff that was said, considering this went on for a week, but in order to get to the point, I won't go into details. Long story short, he really hurt me. Now at the time this affected me, but now it really doesn't, simply because he would constantly give out my room either way when he had other relatives over and I got the couch. But it was only my room he would ever give up, and never his fiance's children's. They're all older than me or a year younger and either in college out of state or married. Only one of them is in high school and there's multiple rooms. I didn't have to deal with it much because I wasn't with every other parent on the weekends. I lived with my mom, and my dad would only ask to see me when he wants or every other holiday. And he'll send me away when he got tired of me or try to put the idea of leaving in my head. A few days ago, his fiancée had sent me a 4th of July barbecue invitation, which I had chosen to ignore because I haven't talked to my father since the beginning of this year. And I felt if I was going to have a communication with this man, it should have been directly from him. But then a few hours later, he had sent a follow-up on the same invitation. He stated a text that she had sent me, but it was 2 different text messages. The one he had quoted sounded more friendly than the one she had sent. So I texted him along the lines of how I felt and what he had told me before I got kicked out, how it wasn't my home and that I was told to never come back, and asking him why he was trying to do something now of all things. Now, my father's a very proud person and loves to see his name in everything. He once gave me a computer and put the account in his name when setting it up. He didn't let me do it. Well, he also put the car that he had given me as a gift in his name as well, and me trusting my father at the time, didn't think he would hold it over my head. After that conversation, he demanded that I give him the car back, stating that I'm being selfish, ungrateful, and disrespectful towards him. After me telling him no, he gave me an ultimatum stating I either give him the car by the middle of June or I give him $5,000. Money he knows that I don't have because I'm a college student who's paying my college tuition by myself with the help of his GI Bill, which he also said he'll take away, and a few scholarships I've earned. To both options, I declined. I don't think I have to pay for a gift that my father's given me as a Christmas present. He then threatened to call the police and report the car stolen, which I told him to go ahead and do so or bring me to court. I'll admit I was a bit heated in the beginning of the conversation, but after a while I calmed down. I wanted to try and talk civilly with him and find a common ground, to which he replied, "It's either you leave the car with the keys in it or you give me $5,000. That's the middle ground, end of discussion." After that, I still asked if we could talk about it, to which he responded even ruder. Now I have multiple texts where he said, "your car," but it's still a bit of a gray area. The only thing solid-ish I have is a text where I asked him if he gives me his car with any intention of me paying him back or telling me to pay him back. His response is, "I am now." He also said I could keep the car in front of his fiancée. The only problem I have is if she will speak the truth if it's brought to court. I'll admit I'm a bit scared as to what will happen, but at the same time, I don't want him to walk all over me, especially when I've been trying to express how I felt. Sadly, I don't know, considering the car's in their name, if OP has any ability to actually fight this. Frankly, as much as it sucks, it might be best to just surrender the car, expect them to be cut from their GI Bill, and frankly just go no contact if this person's gonna try to be like that and is willing to take back that car from you and blow everything up. Our next story is from Dazed Penguin 15. I'm sick of feeling like a piece of crap to my mom. How do I, 21-year-old female, finally establish boundaries? Got off the phone with my mom, who was sobbing and saying, "You don't respect me, you never do." Left me sobbing and saying, "I don't feel respected either. We just have different values and views on life. I, female 21, do respect her. Some context, she's an Asian immigrant. I've worked so hard to do everything that appeases her. Simultaneously, a lot of the things are also done for myself. Straight A's since freshman year of high school, in college as a rising senior. I've always juggled a job and extracurriculars since high school. I'm a clean freak. I have so many random life skills, and I'm the mom/goody two-shoes of every friend group. I even go to a great university in the US. All my friends' parents love me except for my own mother. My mom is super traditional when it comes to dating. She also tries to be controlling and moralistic about relationships. I feel so bad for whoever I end up marrying because they're going to have a nightmare mother-in-law. Anyways, relationships and sexuality are topics that cause my mom and I to fight. This summer, I'm going on a vacation with my boyfriend, and I've spent a month building up the courage to finally tell her. I live quite the drive from home, so I called her to tell her about it, went exactly as I thought, meaning it did not go well. She basically started promiscuous shaming me because she thinks it's scandalous for a young woman to travel with a man she's not married to. I'm in the US and just flying to a different state with him. At the same time, it doesn't matter who I travel with or where I go, she would never approve. My friends are already brainstorming a senior year spring break trip to Mexico, and they want me to come. First thing that popped up in my head was, my mom wouldn't like that. I just hate having that fear. If I could go on the trip without telling her, I wouldn't have mentioned it. But this woman FaceTimes me every day to see what I'm up to. She'll even FaceTime me in the morning on the weekends to make sure I didn't sleep over at my boyfriend's house. There's no sneaking around, even when I'm hundreds of miles away. My mom thinks that everyone's going to judge our family for me going on this trip. But I have no idea who everyone even is. She basically has no friends, no social circles or communities, she hates talking to her family, and we barely talk to our neighbors. I'm just seeking solidarity or advice on how to establish boundaries, get on good terms, and still go on this trip. I've been trying to find a therapist, but everyone in my area is either not in network or not accepting new clients. I'm also financially independent. The only thing my parents can hold over my head is my health and dental insurance. Frankly, I think this is like a rip the band-aid type situation where you just gotta lay it out bluntly. They're being way too over-involved in their life. They're being way too judgmental, controlling. Frankly, you need some space to breathe. You need to be able to wake up in the morning and not feel panicked that you're going to get this FaceTime call that you feel nothing but obligation to pick up and answer when you really don't want to. You gotta figure out what situation really makes you happy, what you think is reasonable for her, and then stand up to them and try to enforce that. If it gets nasty from them, don't let that break your boundaries down. This next story is from Fluffy Fry Bread 07734. Continued story about entitled mother-in-law taking me to court for visitation for grandson. Back in February, I made a post about my youngest son's grandma and her husband taking me to court for visitation for my son. She wanted, and still wants, 1 week per month visitation. I got a call from her attorney's office today, and the person I spoke with explained that not only does entitled mother-in-law want 1 week per month, but also wants 2 weekends and alternating holidays. I said no, and was told that the judge is going to be expecting a written agreement settled out of court by tomorrow. I disagreed to the entire proposal. I didn't want to sound close-minded or stubborn, but I explained that I'd recently received custody of my 3 older kids, and my kids have a strong bond with their brother. They've been away since my son was born, and they just barely moved back. I also mentioned that I'm moving back to my hometown, which is 4 hours away from where I live now. My youngest may have family here, but my older kids and I don't have a support system, so I feel it's best to move closer to family that I've actually been raised around. My mom, grandma, auntie, and siblings. I messaged entitled mother-in-law and let her know what my counteroffer would be. 1 week per month during summer vacation. 2 1 weekend per month. 3 holiday visits are to be done either the weekend before the holiday or the weekend after. Of course, with her being the way she is, her response was, "That's not fair." Then she said that if I'm moving, then she's just going to request 2 week per month visitation. She then told me we'll just have to settle in court. I stuck to my guns and told her that this was my counteroffer. Court is today at 10 a.m. I'm so nervous. She's been a control freak since before my son was even born. And may I mention once again, she's the grandparent, not the parent. Her son's father is in prison for a violent crime. Her husband is also part of the case because he's one of the petitioners as well. But I can't help but believe that she's pulling all the strings and she wears the pants in the relationship. I've not ever refused her visits with my son. She's always been able to see him whenever she wants. We live in the same town for now. This proposal was brought up before my plans to move, by the way. Thanks for listening. I'm not sure where OP lives, but it kind of blows my mind that grandparents would even be able to have a legal case where you could get custody away from the actual parents, given that the actual parents are full-time taking care of those kids. Frankly, I just hope it all works out for OP. And our final story of the day is from Concealed Psychosis. Mom thinks it'd be hilarious to have her hold up a sign saying he's been kidnapped. I'm a former police officer who had to retire due to being badly injured. But this was one of my last calls before the incident that forced me into retirement. I worked for a small-town police department with only 5 or 6 officers on duty at a given time, and we each covered a vast swath of land. My beat mainly was the rural area and county highway that passes throughout the little town. One clear sunny afternoon, I'm doing speed enforcement on the highway when my radio crackles to life of a possible kidnapping in progress, and the dispatcher proceeds to provide the details of the make and model of the car, including a female driver with short blonde hair. I proceed to get onto my computer to see if there's any more details given about this, and sure enough, in the call log it provides even more details saying reporting party, reports there's a young kid sitting in the hatchback part of the vehicle with a sign that says, "Help, I've been kidnapped, call 911, and their hands appear to be tied together. While the call is within our jurisdiction, they're nowhere near me, so there's nothing I can do at the moment besides other officers and sheriff deputies who are already looking for the vehicle. All is quiet for the next 10 minutes. Everybody's behaving themselves and driving the speed limit when my radio crackles to life again. We're getting another call regarding the reported kidnapping. They're now traveling south on County Highway 123, and my ears perk up and my heart starts to race as the vehicle is coming to my direction and will be here any minute. As I'm waiting for the call, dispatch gets 3 more calls from fellow drivers who have seen this young kid holding up the "Help, I've been kidnapped" sign and had called 911 to report it. With this stretch of highway being very flat, I'm able to see cars miles and miles away, especially if I'm using binoculars, and sure enough, here comes the van. And as the van passes me, I can see the female driver who matches the description given by the reporting parties, and the kid sitting up against the side wall in the hatchback area. I don't pull out right away just in case this is an honest-to-God kidnapping. I don't want to spook the driver and get into a high-speed chase. Not to mention, I'm completely alone. And in this type of situation, you want to have a decent amount of backup in case they decide to run, shoot it out, or whatever. So I wait until she's a good mile or 2 away, then I pull out and tailor from that distance until I can get some backup. Luckily, there's a highway patrol barracks not too far away, and they heard my call for assistance. Just as we pass the road that leads to the highway patrol barracks, I see 4 trooper vehicles pull out behind me. So I fall back and let the troopers take lead in case this turned into a chase. They'd already be in position. While we're getting into position to stop the van, we're talking about how we're going to approach the situation. Are we going to do a soft traffic stop and proceed as a regular traffic stop and just pull the driver out of the vehicle, or are we going to do a full felony stop? We decided to do a full felony stop. So we spread out across all 4 lanes of traffic and all turn our lights and blip our sirens at the same time. The female doesn't pull over to the side of the highway in the breakdown lane, but instead slammed on the brakes and stops in the middle of the highway. We all position our vehicles to give us the maximum amount of coverage in case of a gunfight, then get out with weapons drawn while ordering the female driver out of the vehicle. We should have known something was up as soon as she got out of the vehicle. She started screaming, "It was a freaking joke!" But right now, we're not too interested in what she has to say. The point man keeps telling her to keep walking backward until we tell her to stop and then get down on the ground. She complies and she's cuffed. Next, we turn our attention to the female passenger, whom we didn't know at the time, as we couldn't see her face, was the female driver's 13-year-old daughter. But we ordered her backward, get on the ground, and cuffed her. We did this for the next 4 passengers who were riding in the back seats of the van. Once we got all the perceived threats out of the vehicle and secured, 2 troopers went up to clear the vehicle, while another trooper and myself rescued the young boy who was bawling from the hatchback and put him in the back of one of our vehicles to get him away from his perceived kidnappers. The whole time, mind you, the driver and front female passengers kept yelling, "It's a joke, he's my son/brother, I can't believe you guys." So after securing everybody in separate vehicles, we start to get to the bottom of the situation. The first person we talk to is the young boy, who has since calmed down after the female trooper got him a stuffed dinosaur and a snack and began to start asking him questions. This is when we learned the whole thing was the female driver's and her daughter's sick idea of a funny prank. Since the van was full and they decided to put the young kid in the hatchback, they thought it would be funny to make a sign saying, "Help, I've been kidnapped," and have the young boy hold it up while someone else in the van recorded the reaction of other drivers after they read the sign. Apparently they've been doing it all day and just didn't get caught until they reached my area. After talking to the other passengers who were all under the age of 16 and learned it was mainly the idea of the mother and teen daughter, and after some discussion with the county DA on how it should be handled, we were told to kick the 4 teenagers in the back loose with no charges, to write the teenage daughter the juvenile equivalent of a ticket for inducing panic, and last but not least, save the best for Mom. I opened the back door of my vehicle so I could talk to Mom. As soon as I did, she started to get out of the vehicle when I told her to stay put. She said, "Why? Don't you need to take the handcuffs off me so I can sign the ticket you're going to give me, right?" I said it's not quite that simple. I'm afraid you're in a bit more trouble than a simple ticket. You're going to be charged with several felonies. This is when she lost it and started screaming over and over again. It was a freaking joke. I can't believe nobody can take a freaking joke anymore. It was a joke. Now uncuff me or I'm going to have my husband sue you for unlawful detention. I proceeded to read her Miranda warning, and all the while she starts sobbing with no tears, I might add, while muttering it was a freaking joke. After I finished with her Miranda warning, I asked her if she was willing to talk to me. She told me to freak off. I did just that and shut the door to let her wait for the transport vehicle. By this time, the husband and father had shown up at the scene to collect his kids and the vehicle and was filled in on the situation. All he could do was shake his head and say, "This isn't the first time she's done stupid crap like this before. It's just the first time she's been caught, and I've warned her in the past not to do it because I knew it would end up in a situation like this." After about 10 minutes, the transport van showed up and took her away, and I went back to quite an afternoon of catching speeders. The female driver was charged with the following: 7 counts of inducing panic, all misdemeanor, 6 counts of felony child endangerment, 1 for each kid she had in the vehicle. Reason it was a felony is that her actions put her children's lives in the danger by forcing us to do a felony stop over a prank/joke. 1 count of having an unrestrained child. She decided to put her 6-year-old son in the hatchback of the van because they didn't have any room up front. While none of those kids should have been back there, I'd rather one of the older kids instead of the 6-year-old. Her reason why? Because the other boys were too tall and wouldn't have been comfortable back there. I mean, let's talk about the distraction in general. Some drivers going along and in the back window they see this sign saying, "Help, I've been kidnapped." They might be pressured to try to follow, keep an eye on the kid. That's going to be distracting drivers left and right, taking eyes off the road, potentially causing human error. It might be one of those ideas that sound funny in total theory, but it's pretty clear that this lady seems to have very, very, very little deductive reasoning skills, because it should be blatant why that's a terrible idea to have all these strangers on the road see this sign with a kid saying, "Help, I've been kidnapped." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to see another Entitled Parent story that was even more insane than the ones in this video, click on that left video. Or if you missed my latest video, click on the right. But with that said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.